Kicking off our countdown at number 10 is Mariah Carey. The two ladies have had a friendship for many years, but there was a moment in their friendship where Ellen's humor proved to go too far. The big debate with comedians is, are their jokes funny or are they actually mean? Mariah believes that this one was a bit mean, but she did handle it well despite the fact. What happened was she went on Ellen's show to do an interview, and Ellen brought up the rumors that were going around at the time that Mariah might be pregnant. Right away, Mariah says, "Let's not talk about that." But then Ellen takes out 2 glasses of champagne and tries to force her to drink it to prove that she's not pregnant. Mariah is hesitant, and it might be because she was in her early stages of pregnancy at the time, and oftentimes females don't want to reveal it because in the first trimester, miscarriages are common. Sadly, Mariah did have a miscarriage and revealed the news later down the road. I personally watched this video and I did not find it funny. I feel like forcing someone to drink alcohol to prove if they're pregnant or not, like, I get the joke, but probably not a good one, Ellen. Up next, number 9 is Dakota Johnson. Back in 2019, the actress sparked a fire on the internet after she went on the Ellen show for an interview. The two of them have had this ongoing debate on whether or not Ellen has been invited to Dakota's birthday parties. In 2018, Dakota admits that she didn't invite Ellen because she didn't know that she would want to be invited. So she invited Ellen in 2019, but Ellen didn't show up and gave no explanation. But when Dakota went on her show, Ellen called her out and said that she didn't invite her to her birthday party again. The tension was super awkward to watch, I'm not gonna lie. And Dakota says, "Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. Ask everybody. Ask Jonathan, your producer." Ellen's producer live ends up confirming that she was invited and didn't go. You can tell that Dakota was not taking Ellen's this time and was making sure that everyone knew that she was invited. Not sure why Ellen was trying to make it look like she wasn't, but the whole thing was super, super awkward. Like, I wish they could have just removed that whole part from the interview. Swiping the number 8 spot is Mark Ruffalo. You're probably wondering what the hell kind of beef he has with Ellen. It all just seems very random, not gonna lie. And it kind of is. Remember when the world went to a frenzy because Ellen was sitting with George Bush at a Dallas Cowboys game? She received a ton of hate for it, but did a monologue on her show where she said that they are friends despite their different beliefs. Like she always does, she spoke about kindness and said that she chooses to be kind to everyone. But Mark didn't agree with that and let his feelings out in a tweet. He wrote, "Sorry, until George W. Bush is brought to justice for the crimes of the Iraq War, including American-led torture, Iraqi deaths and displacement, and the deep scars, emotional and otherwise, inflicted on our military that served his folly, we can't even begin to talk about kindness." Clearly, he does not agree with Ellen's decision on who she chooses to have in her friend circle. Rolling into number 7 is Kelly Ripa. She was one half of the morning show's favorite couples. Her and Michael Strahm were co-hosting Live with Kelly and Michael from 2012 to 2016. But then Michael suddenly announced that he was leaving the show to join ABC's Good Morning America, and his relationship with Kelly began to crumble. Most hosts decided to remain neutral on the conflict, but Ellen invited him on her show, which hurt Kelly's feelings. Source said that Kelly was livid and said, I quote, "Cozying up with Michael was like telling the world she had taken his side and she was taunting Kelly." People had different opinions on the situation though. Some believe that Ellen's decision wasn't intentional, while others thought that she knew what kind of outcome would come from it. Moving on to number 6 is Kathy Griffin. All right, so they've had drama for a while now apparently. It's been an ongoing feud and it all comes down to whose side of the story you will believe. In 2016, she published a tell-all book called Kathy Griffin Celebrity Run-Ins, My A to Z Index. In the book, she dished out dirt on about more than 100 celebrities, and Ellen was one of them. She wrote, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmy Awards. I can't prove it, but this person, who has short blonde hair, has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." But Ellen denies the story and says that Kathy is the mean one. Rumors were claiming that Ellen banned her from her show, but Ellen spoke about it during the interview and said, "I didn't ban her from the show because first you have to be on the show to be banned." Shots fired. Ellen is sassy. Halfway into our list, number 5 is Caitlyn Jenner. Back in 2015, Caitlyn went on Ellen's show and made a shocking confession, or so it seemed. During her interview, Ellen asked her what her stance was on same-sex marriage, and she said that there was a time that she did not support it. Ellen fired back at her immediately and made it seem like she wasn't supportive of the LGBTQ community. And then, after the interview, Ellen took shots at Caitlyn while talking on the Howard Stern show. She said she was unfairly passing judgment about gay people and marriage. But it turns out that that wasn't the case, and Caitlyn was not happy that she was trying to paint her in that light. Caitlyn opened up about the full story and said that she had actually talked to Ellen on the phone prior to taping the interview and convinced her to discuss her shifting stance on marriage equality. But then Ellen kind of flipped the switch on her during the interview and made it sound like she was against it. That all does seem pretty sketchy. And at number 4 is Joan Rivers. The icon has passed away and is not able to speak on her side of the story anymore, but Kathy Griffin chose to tell it, which is also one of the reasons that her and Ellen still aren't very friendly with each other. Kathy opened up to Variety and said, "One of the things that really hurt Joan, and we talked about it at our last meal together, was that Ellen always shunned her and Ellen thought she was vulgar and not funny." Apparently, despite all of their drama, Kathy still reached out to Ellen to check if she was going to do a tribute for Joan after she died in 2014, but claims said that Ellen did not want to. Kathy finished her story by saying that she wished Ellen would have celebrated her more because she has such an incredible platform, and Joan was the one who broke the glass ceiling for women talk show hosts. So she should have gave like a really nice tribute to her, is what most people believe. Coming into number 3 is Nikki Tutorials. The YouTuber went on Ellen's show for an interview earlier this year and was quick to go on the internet and start sharing how bad her experience was. Like Ellen, Nikki is also a big influence in the LGBTQ community after coming out as transgender on her channel. Before her interview, she gushed online about how excited she was to go on the show because she was a big fan of hers. But after the airing, she said that Ellen didn't even say hi to her before going on stage and said that the whole experience just felt very cold and distant. She also admitted that she didn't even have a place to go to the bathroom, claiming that the closest bathroom to her was reserved for the Jonas Brothers and that she was not allowed to use it. I feel like that's kind of illegal. Where was she going to the bathroom then? Swiping the number 2 spot is Susan Sarandon. She too did not agree with Ellen's speech about being friends with George W. Bush. When Ellen spoke about the controversy on her show, she said, "I have friends who don't think the same things that I do. When I say be kind to one another, I don't mean only the people who think the same way you do. I mean be kind to everyone." Susan tweeted a response and posted a quote from Out magazine saying, "But missing the point entirely, DeGeneres framed the issues as simply a matter of her hanging out with someone with different opinions, not a man repeatedly accused of being a war criminal." Clearly, I just think that everyone's gonna have their own opinion on that situation. If Ellen can pick and choose if she's friends with George Bush or if she's not, yeah, I feel like that everyone's gonna have a different opinion on that. And I'm gonna keep mine to myself. In the number 1 spot is Kevin T. Porter. You know things are bad when a comedian offers donations online in exchange for stories about Ellen being one of the meanest people alive. His words, not mine. That is right. Kevin tweeted out that he would donate to Los Angeles Regional Food Bank if people would share a story when Ellen was mean to them. He quickly got over 2,000 replies with people sharing stories of her being rude. He was wanting to show everyone that Ellen is not what she appears to be and thought if people could see all of these stories at once, it would help shed some light on that. He was exchanging $2 for every story, but then it got hard to tell which stories were real or not, so he just donated $600 and then attached the screenshot of his receipt. So he actually did donate the money. However, I feel like you are going above and beyond to try and expose someone for being mean. And isn't that kind of mean?
In at number 10, embarrassed her own audience. Now, not all of these reasons for Ellen's career falling apart have happened recently. In 2017, Ellen was beloved by everyone, but some started to view her in a more negative light when she embarrassed one of her audience members live on TV. Ellen had set up a table with cheap gift bags and had her team put in a hidden camera. When one of the guests grabbed an extra bag for a family member that couldn't make it to the taping, Ellen just put her on blast.
I like that you like the product so much that you wanted to bring one back for your sister, but now when you go like to Costco or
The worst part is that Ellen embarrassed her in front of the entire studio audience as well as everyone watching at home. All she could do is just laugh along with everyone else in this very awkward televised moment. It's very lazy of her to just embarrass her own audience for a game, and everyone saw right through it. In at number 9, she exposed Mariah Carey. Back in 2008 when Mariah Carey came onto The Ellen Show, there had been rumors circulating that Mariah may be pregnant. However, instead of respecting her wishes to not mention these rumors or further speculate, Ellen forced her to address it.
I'm not going to ask you if you're pregnant or not.
This is peer pressure. Do you see what Ellen is doing? This is peer pressure.
No. Let's toast to you not being pregnant if you're not pregnant.
You see, Ellen wanted to be the first one to break this story of Mariah's pregnancy, and to do so she brought out alcohol to force a confession. Now, clearly if Mariah was pregnant, having alcohol would be a terrible idea, but why does Ellen feel like she's in charge of this information in the first place? Despite all of Mariah's refusing to take part in Ellen's game, she was eventually backed into a corner. She then takes a small sip from the glass that prompts Ellen to start shouting that Mariah is pregnant. Sadly, Mariah Carey would have a miscarriage just a few weeks later. Good job, Ellen. In at number 8, rude to YouTubers. Most of the time, Ellen fawns over celebrities, but it's rarely celebrities that come from any other realm than Hollywood. For example, when she had YouTuber Nikki Tutorials on the show, she was treated far worse than any of the other guests. The makeup guru said that her appearance on The Ellen Show has reminded her to never meet her idols. Upon arriving on set, Nikki recalled that Ellen didn't even say hello to her, adding, "Call me naive, but I kind of expected to be welcomed with confetti cannons, welcome to the Ellen DeGeneres show, but instead I was greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked." Which actually brings us to our next point. In at number 7, strange rules for her staff. When Kevin Porter tweeted out, "Right now we all need a little kindness, you know, like Ellen DeGeneres always talks about. She's also notoriously one of the meanest people alive. Respond to this with the most insane stories you've heard about Ellen being mean and I'll match everyone with $2 to the LA Food Bank." And the responses were overwhelming. However, for this point, let's focus in on the ones about the bizarre rules for her staff. Benjamin Simeon said, A, she has a sensitive nose, so everyone must chew gum from a bowl outside of her office before talking to her, and if she thinks you smell that day, you have to go home and shower. You have to go home and shower? Who does that? What a weird power move. You smell, so stop working, go home, shower, and then come back and stay late. Chelsea Babcock then said, "When I was working on At Midnight, our stage manager told us to never work for Ellen. He told us that she had signs up in her office that say, 'Do not look the host in the eye.'" I'm sorry, but that's far from normal. Don't look her in the eye? That's just a bizarre rule to have. In at number 6, she bailed on her staff. When the pandemic shut down all of the studios in Hollywood, Ellen was faced with a tough choice. She has spoken about how much she loves and appreciates her staff, so you would think that in these difficult times that she would have at least kept them in the loop. The core stage crew though for the show had a staff of more than 30 employees, yet they received no written communication about the status of their working hours, pay, or inquiries about their mental and physical health from producers for over a month. Then when they finally were notified, nearly all crew members were told to brace for a 60% reduction in pay, even as the show continued to air from Ellen's home. The worst part is that she hired a non-union crew to replace the staff she apparently cared so much for. Oh, and then she said her mansion felt like jail.
One thing that I've learned from being in quarantine is that people, this is like being in jail, is what it is.
Hashtag never forget. Never forget that she said her mansion felt like a jail cell. In at number 5, rude to regular people. Going back to that original tweet from Kevin Porter for a moment here, a lot of people who didn't work for Ellen but had interactions with her otherwise also popped into the conversation. A.D. Rose said, "My friend waited on her and she threw a plate of salmon in his face because it wasn't what she ordered." That one seems like pretty wild, right? But when you read on, there's several more servers and wait staff that have also complained about her. Take Chris Farah, for example. She said, "I worked at Real Food Daily and served her and Portia at brunch. She wrote a letter to the owner and complained about my chipped nail polish. Not that it was on her plate, but that it was just on my hand. I had worked till closing the night before and this was next morning. Almost got me fired." She tried to have this woman fired because she had chipped nail polish. I'm sorry, but if that makes you so mad that you have to sit down and write a letter, you need anger management classes. In at number 4, she was caught lying. When Dakota Johnson came on the show, we really got to see that Ellen is not afraid to lie right to someone's face. She said happy belated birthday a month after Dakota's birthday, like, at that point, why even televise how forgetful you are? Then following that awkward moment, she starts digging into Johnson about not being invited to her birthday again, which leads to Dakota calling her out on that lie.
Actually, no, that's not the truth, Ellen. You were invited. Last time I was on the show, last year, you gave me a bunch of about not inviting you, but I didn't even know you wanted to be invited.
Pretty nuts that she was rude to her the last time she was on the show, and then again right when she came back. She even insisted that she was never invited just to cover up that she was out of town hanging out with President Bush. Speaking of, in at number 3, friends with enemies. Ellen hanging out with President George W. Bush really was the breaking point for a lot of her fans. Ellen has been a strong advocate for gay marriage, and so when she buddies up to a president who has advocated against this for his entire time in office, it's a little gross to see. CJ writes, Laura and George Bush sitting with Ellen and Portia is not something I expected to see at an NFL game. You and everyone else, CJ. Ellen trying to play this off as simply two people with differing opinions hanging out and setting aside their differences. That might be true for regular people, but for two individuals that hold a position of power, we expect a little more. I said it before, but I'll drop his name again. Walker Bregman said it the best. Walker tweeted, "Here's the thing, Ellen, George W. Bush is a war criminal who is responsible for death on a cataclysmic scale. It's not a matter of being friends with people with different beliefs. We all have those friends. It's about having a little perspective on the damage that he's done." In at number 2, mean to people with disabilities. So not only has Ellen had a mean streak with guests, celebrities, and even her own audience, turns out she's especially not a fan of people with disabilities. Within the Kevin Porter tweet, Josh Levesque replied with this: "A friend of mine told me about a custodian she knew who was fired because he was slightly autistic and forgot that he wasn't allowed to look at or speak to her, and he loved greeting everyone." Now, not on Ellen's watch. I mean, rules are rules, buddy. I don't care if you're autistic, what disability you have. You look Ellen in the eyes and you're out. Just the rules of the Ellen Show. Then there was this heartbreaking one. Lindsay Jamba tweeted, "My brother is a Make-A-Wish kid. His wish was to be at the 12 Days of Ellen, which was arranged 1 month before they canceled because Ellen refuses to interact with disabled people." Crushed his heart. That's messed up and something that any person just can't ignore, whether you're a fan of hers or not. Last but certainly not least, on our number 1 spot, refused to honor Joan Rivers. Whether Ellen wants to believe it or not, Joan Rivers paved the way, especially for female comedians who wanted to break into the mainly male-dominated world. Joan Rivers did so much in the world of entertainment, so when she passed away, it was upsetting for a lot of people. Most late-night shows did tributes to remember Joan, but Ellen did not. Now, Brett Hawkins tweeted this out, and it makes a lot of sense as to why she refused to honor Joan. Kathy Griffin said that when Joan Rivers died, Ellen staunchly refused to do a tribute to her because her comedy and Kathy's were the wrong kind, too mean-spirited. Then he goes on to say that how we love a pious comic. What's worse to realize after reading that tweet is the fact that sometimes the people who claim to be nice are actually very mean behind closed doors. They use this image of being a philanthropist and kind person to mask the demons that they're trying to keep under wraps. Ellen is one of them. And Marlene's pointing at me too.
In at number 10, Catherine Kelly Lang. An old clip from a TV show has just resurfaced, and it shows some celebrities talking about Ellen's mean streak years before it happened. Soap actress Catherine Kelly Lang and entertainment reporter Richard Reed had the conversation on a 2019 episode of I'm a Celebrity. When someone asked who the biggest mole in Hollywood was, Reed whispered, quote, "Ellen, not nice." Lang agreed, saying, quote, "She's great to watch on her show and everything, but I think her personality is completely different when you get her behind the scenes." Reed then replied, quote, "I've heard it's hard to work on her show." And after exposing Ellen like that, I'm sure the two stars did everything possible to avoid her. It's crazy how much they knew though way back in 2019. In at number 9, Nikki Tutorials. Nikki DeJagger, aka Nikki Tutorials, was the first and probably most famous influencer to sound the alarm about Ellen. And obviously after exposing Ellen like that, Nikki hoped she would never run into her again. Nikki appeared on the show after her coming out video went viral online. However, later on a Dutch talk show, she exposed the experience was not what she expected. When asked about the Ellen show, she said, quote, "Let me say there's a big difference between this show and Ellen DeGeneres, and I'm saying that in favor of this show." Adding, quote, "It's nice that you say hi before the show." She didn't. Nikki later told the Dutch magazine NC, quote, "Call me naive, but I kind of expected to be welcomed with confetti cannons. Welcome to the Ellen DeGeneres show." But instead it was greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked. Nikki knew that she would be blacklisted from Ellen's show and possibly many others for telling the truth, but we are all glad that she did. In at number 8, Dakota Johnson. Dakota Johnson is probably a little bit scared of Ellen right now because her name is synonymous with the takedown of Ellen. After Ellen announced that she was leaving her show, memes of their interaction started to go viral online, and it's clear that Ellen probably hates Dakota right now. The spat between them started because of Dakota's birthday party. Basically, Ellen called Dakota out on the show for not inviting her to the party, but Dakota clapped back that she actually did invite Ellen. This put Ellen totally on the spot, where she had to come up with a lie very quickly. Dakota later awkwardly called Nikki Tutorials her favorite comedian as well, which was kind of a Ellen. Dakota also flat out said in the interview, quote, "I didn't even know you liked me," to Ellen. I'm sure Dakota never expected her comments to go viral the way they did, and Dakota is hoping that she doesn't see Ellen anytime soon. Or at least I know if I was Dakota, I would literally do everything possible to avoid Ellen for the rest of my life. In at number 7, Brad Garrett. Back when Ellen was first exposed, one of the only celebrities to call her out was the Everybody Loves Raymond actor Brad Garrett. He exposed her in a slew of tweets because he was clearly fed up with her behavior. He wrote on Twitter that her behavior was not a shock to him or anyone else in the industry for that matter. He replied to a tweet about the Ellen scandal and added, quote, "Sorry, but it comes from the top, the Ellen show. No more than one who were treated horribly by her. Common knowledge." His tweet is now deleted. Garrett had appeared on the show multiple times before he made his statements, but clearly he didn't have a great experience and knew those comments would ruin his relationship with Ellen forever, but clearly he didn't seem to care. In at number 6, Caitlyn Jenner. If you watched the last interview Ellen did with Caitlyn shortly after her transition, then you definitely know why Ellen will not be having her back on the show. Caitlyn even claimed that Ellen told her she was blacklisted. In her memoir, The Secrets of My Life, Caitlyn called out Ellen specifically for, quote, alienating her from the LGBTQ community by not allowing Caitlyn to come on her show. However, many could argue that Caitlyn alienated herself because of the controversial comments that she made in that interview. In the 2015 interview, Ellen asked about Caitlyn's stance on gay marriage. She replied, quote, "I have to admit that I remember 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever it was that whole gay marriage issue came up, I was not for it." Adding, quote, "If that word marriage is important to you, I can go with it." And from Caitlyn's tone, it didn't seem genuine to Ellen, and Ellen called Caitlyn out on her hypocrisy, as Caitlyn wanted to be respected for being trans, but Caitlyn was still being apprehensive towards gay marriage. After this spat, it was clear the relationship was incredibly tense. Halfway at number 5, Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin has actually gotten into multiple feuds with Ellen, so I would assume both of them avoid each other at all costs. Kathy exposed Ellen in her book, Celebrity Run-Ins, My A to Z Index. In that book, Griffin called out Ellen without saying her name, saying, quote, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmy Awards." Griffin basically confirmed it was Ellen when she added that this person, quote, "has short blonde hair and a mean streak all of Hollywood knows about." But this wasn't all. After Joan Rivers passed away, Griffin feuded with Ellen once again because of her decision to not do a memoriam segment on the comedian. Griffin said, quote, "There's so few female comics over 50. I wish we were better at supporting each other." In at number 4, Callum Scott. Callum Scott exposed Ellen following her scandal for an awkward moment that he had before going on her show. He told the Daily Star Online that right before he was about to go on stage, he was walking with a stage member. Scott was telling the Ellen crew member, quote, "I told him I can't believe I'm getting to do this." And he was like, "Yeah, it's so amazing, but remember not to look Ellen in the eye. Everything else is fine, but just don't look her in the eye." Scott was obviously taken aback by this and wasn't sure how to respond, but moments later, Ellen's staff said that they were actually just joking and it was some sort of prank. And that's just a very strange prank considering many people claimed this was a real rule that Ellen had for her staff. And even if it was just a harmless prank, that's a really stupid prank to make to someone who was incredibly nervous to be going on stage and performing. In at number 3, Celine Dion. Celine Dion had a very awkward encounter with Ellen while she was on her show, and it left many of Celine's fans with a bad impression of Ellen, probably including Celine herself. While Celine was being interviewed, Ellen showed a picture of Celine's son that had very long hair at the time. Ellen said, quote, "Look at him. He is beautiful, but look at his hair. When are you gonna cut that hair?" Celine instantly clapped back saying, "You got a problem with that?" Adding, quote, "Some people shave the head of their children and people say, oh, isn't that terrible? I don't even cut my son's hair and they say, oh my God, when is she gonna cut her son's hair? You know, whatever I do, I won't please everyone." And you could cut the tension in that conversation with a knife. Celine has been back on the show since that incident, but I'm sure Ellen treads very lightly in her conversations now. In at number 2, Drew Barrymore. This one is probably going to be hard for a lot of you to believe, but apparently Ellen and Drew Barrymore do not like each other. And when they worked on the same show together, they butted heads a lot. This show was NBC's First Dates that launched in April 2017. It was executive produced by Ellen DeGeneres and narrated by Drew Barrymore, so clearly a star-studded group. But according to In Touch Weekly, their relationship was not good. A source told the Meg, quote, Ellen and Drew were a case of oil and water. Adding, quote, Ellen expected to be the one calling the shots, but Drew thought she should have creative control because she's the movie star people were tuning in to see. The show only aired for 1 season, so thankfully they didn't have to work together long, but now that Drew is in the daytime talk show business, I'm sure Ellen is even less fond of her. And finally at number 1, Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan feuds with a lot of people, and unsurprisingly, Ellen was one of those people. Their feud is actually because of Katy Perry. Basically, for Katy Perry's birthday in 2017, Ellen wished her a happy birthday on Twitter, writing, quote, happy birthday Katy Perry, it's time to bring out the big balloons. Ellen included a photo of her staring at Perry's breasts jokingly, but many people did not think it was funny and labeled it as a form of sexual harassment. Some even compared Ellen to Harvey Weinstein. A lot of men in the industry also spoke out against it, saying the situation would have been a lot different if a man tweeted out the same thing. One of the most vocal critics was Piers Morgan, criticizing her for the sexist double standard. He also feuded with her in 2016 after she showed a shirtless picture of Chris Hemsworth during an acceptance speech. With Morgan writing, quote, I was disgusted. In fact, I've never been so offended by anything in my entire life. Kicking off our list at number 10 is how she treats her staff. She's always had a reputation for producing a show that is filled with laughter, positive vibes, and kindness. But it turns out that this might not be the whole truth, and a source came forward saying that she treats her staff like they are her peasants. They came forward and said, when the cameras aren't rolling, she treats staffers as if they are her peasants. She doesn't even brief the staff about the show anymore. They also alleged only a few lucky people are actually allowed to talk to Ellen when working on set or even looking her in the eye. This mystery source was very passionate about their bad experience and went as far as saying that Ellen plays favorites just to create tension and jealousy. Apparently, Ellen selects which staff to invite to fun events and then leaves the other ones in the dust. Up next, number 9 is Caitlyn Jenner felt burned by Ellen. Back in 2015, Caitlyn made a shocking confession while doing an interview on her show, saying that there was a time she didn't support same-sex marriage. She was asked about her stance on it, and she said, at first, I was not for it. Ellen was offended and took shots at Caitlyn while talking on the Howard Stern show. She said she was unfairly passing judgment about gay people and marriage. Maybe she didn't want to dance with me on the show because I'm lesbian. But Caitlyn was quick to set the story straight and didn't like Ellen's untrue response. She expressed that she talked to Ellen on the phone prior to the interview taping and convinced her to discuss her shifting stance on marriage equality. But then Ellen kind of flipped the switch on her during the interview and made it sound like she was against same-sex marriage. But apparently she's not. And apparently Ellen never even asked her to dance, and she said she would have loved to dance with Ellen. Who doesn't want to dance with Ellen? Making our way to number 8 is the time that she defended Kevin Hart over a homophobic tweet. She angered a lot of her fans back in 2019 after she interviewed the comedian when he stepped down from being the Oscar host that year. If you missed all of that drama, he was asked to host the Oscar until homophobic tweets from his past resurfaced, and the only way that they would let him host is if he apologized for it. He ended up stepping down from the host position and refused to apologize because he already apologized for them in the past. One of the tweets from 2011 was a joke about what he would do if he caught his son playing with a dollhouse. He tweeted, I'd beak it over his head and say, stop, that's gay. But he refused to apologize, and Ellen actually brought him on her show and supported his decision to step down. She called the people attacking him about his tweets haters and actually encouraged him to not let it destroy him. It comes across very hypocritical, especially after the whole Caitlyn Jenner story I just told you. Like, you were mad at her for not agreeing with same-sex marriage, but this guy straight up posted a homophobic tweet and you're in support. I get that it's not coming across in the right way. Sliding into the number 7 spot is she did not support a writer's strike. Back in 2007, there was a writer's strike and Ellen carried on with the show anyways. She respected the picket lines for one day, but then returned to the studio the following day. She claims that she didn't have to actually follow the legal actions required, and when she filmed the next day, she said, "I love my writers, and in honor of them, I'm not gonna do a monologue." She felt that it was enough to give up the monologue part of her show, but the truth is, she was not supposed to create new episodes at all. The union condemned the decision to move forward and wrote in a statement that Ellen was not welcome in New York, where the show was scheduled to film in a few weeks' time. The Writers Guild of America wrote, "It's sad that Ellen couldn't even stand by writers for more than one day. Writers who have helped make her extremely successful. I'll love your show, but you can't just make a show when there's a writer's strike." Coming to the number 6 spot is she was sued for making fun of a woman's name. It was a very weird lawsuit back in 2016 when a Georgia-based real estate agent named T.T. Pierce sued Ellen for making a joke about her name. It happened during her "What's Wrong with These Ads and Signs" segment when she joked and called her Titty instead of TT. In the lawsuit, Pierce pointed out that Ellen knew her name was pronounced TT and that she faced harassment following the episode. The case was ultimately thrown out, and the judge said that the letter I in the English language can be pronounced several ways. This one will kind of depend on whose side of the story you believe. Ellen's producers did say they never intended to hurt anyone's feelings, but many people believe that Ellen knew that she was just making fun of her on purpose, obviously for the joke of the segment. Halfway through, we have the time she made Corinne Olympius uncomfortable. She was another celebrity who guest appeared on Ellen's show and went on to say that the experience wasn't so nice. She talked about it while speaking on The Morning Breath in 2017 when she was asked if the rumors were true about Ellen being a diva behind the scenes. She admitted that the show isn't what it seems to be and that there's truth that people don't get to see from Ellen. She kept things pretty vague, but said that she felt uncomfortable when talking to her. She said that before the taping, she was super excited because she was a big fan of her, obviously, and said it felt like she'd be talking to Dory from Finding Nemo, like the lovable goofy blue fish, played by Ellen. But the experience was different for her, and she said, "I've kept this in for so long, but to be honest, Ellen just made me a little uncomfortable." And for obvious reasons, Ellen denied these claims. Well, to be honest, she just didn't really comment on it altogether. Kind of like an eye roll thing to this whole story. We're at number 4 now, and we have the inappropriate comment about Katy Perry's breasts. Ellen swears that her heart and mind were in the right place when she tweeted out a birthday message for Katy saying, "Happy birthday, Katy, it's time to bring out the big balloons." But it was followed by an image of Ellen with her wife staring at Katy's breasts. The picture was obviously a joke. Both Katy and Ellen's wife are both laughing in it, but fans were not impressed and they actually started a trending hashtag double standard. People weren't impressed, even fellow celebrities joined in on the hashtag. Piers Morgan tweeted, "If a man made this joke, Ellen would lead the cries of sexist pig." People actually claimed that her tweet contradicted her Me Too monologue where she criticized sexual harassment and said it is not a male or female thing. Of course, Ellen is a comedian and said that the tweet was just meant as a joke. Taking over the 3rd spot is when she made Kathy Griffin cry. I feel like that is not an easy thing to accomplish. In 2016, she published a tell-all book called Kathy Griffin's Celebrity Run-Ins, My A to Z Index. In the book, she dished some dirt about more than 100 celebrities, and Ellen was one of them. She wrote, "I'm almost positive a certain beloved daytime talk show host once had me kicked out of a backstage dressing room at the Emmy Awards. I can't prove it, but this person who has short blonde hair has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." But Ellen said that it's not true, so you kind of have to judge if she is lying or not. Ellen said her piece on the situation and called Kathy very mean. She said, "She did a whole thing that I banned her from the show. I didn't ban her from the show because first, you have to be on the show to be banned." I'm interested to know, who do you believe? Do you believe Kathy Griffin? Do you believe Ellen? I want to know. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Taking over the number 2 spot is her charity led to an IRS nightmare. One thing she's known for on her show is all the generous gifts and donations that she gives to people in need. In 2013, she helped a woman named Shonda Fields after she lost her job as a substitute teacher. She gave her whole family approximately $55,000 to help everyone, and of course, they were overjoyed. But later on, tax collectors in Ohio threatened her with jail time for failing to pay $1,700 in taxes for the non-employee compensation awarded to her by The Ellen Show. She ended up having to pay a fine, and fans were actually shocked to hear about it. For some reason, people started coming at Ellen and her team, saying that it's not fair to award people large sums of money that they're gonna have to pay taxes on. Some people said that she lies about the fine print when she gives away all of these prizes on her show, and that they really aren't what they seem to be. I actually have a small fun fact for you. My friend got on The Ellen Show as a nurse, as a guest, and she got to play one of those games and actually won a prize. And she did get her 2 TVs and her check for $20,000. So all I gotta say is, it might be true. There might be some truth to these prizes. In the number 1 spot is Nikki Tutorials. The YouTuber recently went on Ellen's show for an interview and later spoke about her bad experience. Similar to Ellen, Nikki is a big influence in the LGBTQ community after coming out as transgender. And before her interview, she gushed online about how excited she was, only to admit that the experience wasn't what she thought it would be. She said that Ellen didn't even say hi to her before going on stage, and said the experience was just cold and distant. She also admitted that she didn't even have a place to go to the bathroom. Is that even legal? Nikki explained and said, every guest at Ellen had a private toilet, but I didn't. I couldn't even use the closest toilet to me because it was reserved for the Jonas Brothers. They were allowed, but I wasn't. Even looking back though, my interview got 8 million views and theirs only got 2 million. Ha! Of course, Ellen is saying that these claims are not true. I don't know if she's lying. I don't know who to believe.
At number 10, toxic workplace. Allegations of a toxic work environment was the scandal that really started it all. There had been some buzz surrounding how Ellen treats others, whether that be guests on her show or employees, but things really started to pick up when real people started coming forward about how they were being treated while working at The Ellen Show. A number of former employees came forward to expose Ellen for being a horrible boss. Some people brought up how she would use racial microaggressions and how she would pick on each one of her employees. Actor Benjamin Simon came forward with 6 stories about Ellen that showed the world just how mean she really is and how disrespectful she is to her staff. Benjamin tweeted out about how Ellen reportedly has a quote, sensitive nose and requires everyone to chew gum before talking to her, and will also order people to go home and shower if she doesn't like the way you smell. He also added that Ellen would make a point of picking on a different employee every day, and that when she's in a bad mood, she gets staff members to come to her office and forces them to do comedy bits for her to cheer her up by laughing at them. Benjamin also said that if Ellen doesn't like the monologue that someone wrote for her that day, she will throw it on the floor, refusing to do it. These and countless other stories revealed to the public just how toxic things are over at The Ellen Show, and this first scandal marks the beginning of the comedian's downfall. At number 9, quarantine comments. In April last year, when everyone was stuck inside during the world's first COVID lockdown, a lot of people started working from home, including Ellen DeGeneres. The Ellen Show was being broadcast from her home, and on April 6th, during her opening monologue, Ellen made some comments about her quarantine experience that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. During the episode, Ellen compared her experience of staying in her home to being in jail, saying, quote, "One thing I've learned from being in quarantine is that this is like being in jail. It is what it is. It's mostly because I've been wearing the same clothes for 10 days and everyone here is gay." These comments were not taken very well by the public, and the comedian faced a lot of backlash for comparing her experience of quarantining in her California mansion to living in incarceration, where COVID infections are already incredibly high. Her comments were seen as offensive to those currently living in incarceration because their lives are more greatly at risk because of the infection rates, and a lot of people interpreted her monologue as making fun of those who aren't as privileged to be living in a mansion like she is. At number 8, Hollywood mean streak. After Ellen was exposed for her toxic workplace environment, people started coming forward with their horror stories of the comedian. At first, former employees were jumping on the Ellen is over party trend, but soon some celebrities started commenting on their experiences with Ellen, and a lot of them reminded the public that Ellen's bad attitude isn't anything new. For years, celebrities have known about Ellen's Hollywood mean streak, and some of them have come forward to expose her. Fellow comedian Kathy Griffin has been very outspoken about Ellen's mean streak and even wrote about it in her book, Kathy Griffin's Celebrity Run-Ins: My A to Z Index. In her book, she dished about some awful run-ins that she's had with Ellen, detailing some of the mean things she's done to her. In the book, she wrote, quote, "I can't prove it, but this person who has short blonde hair has a mean streak that all of Hollywood knows about." But it's not just Kathy who says Ellen's mean streak has been common knowledge, as comedian Brad Garrett also chimed in to speak his truth about who Ellen really is behind the scenes. After Ellen issued an apology to her staff members, which we will talk about later, some people weren't buying into this declaration, including Brad Garrett. In response to Ellen's apology, he tweeted saying, quote, "Sorry, but it comes from the top, at The Ellen Show. No more than one were treated horribly by her. Common knowledge." Maybe he was speaking from experience having worked in the same industry as her, or because he had been a guest on her show a few times in the mid-2000s. The fact that he and Kathy, as well as a few other celebrities, called Ellen's mean streak common knowledge really helped prove that it's not just her employees who've had bad experiences with her. At number 7, lockdown layoffs. During the first lockdown the world experienced last spring, there were a lot of changes in many workplaces. Some people were transitioning to working from home, and many others sadly lost their jobs. This was a very uncertain time for a lot of people, including many Ellen Show employees, because of a huge lack in communication. Shortly after the show made their transition from the studio to home, news came out reporting about how Ellen Show employees had been replaced by non-union workers in order to cut down on the cost of paying their other employees. As a result, a lot of employees were left in the dark and without pay for a few weeks, which just angered more people and made Ellen look worse. At this point, she was not only experiencing backlash for being a bully towards her employees, but also for causing layoffs as well as pay deductions. At number 6, racial injustice tweet. At the height of the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, many celebrities were coming forward to talk about the racial injustices many Black people around the world have been facing. Some of them tweeted about it, others went to protest, but overall, most of them tried to do their part by spreading awareness. Ellen tried to do this, but it didn't go over very well, as many people thought she missed the mark with her BLM tweet. In her later deleted tweet about racial injustice, Ellen said, quote, "Like so many of you, I am angry, I am sad. People of color in this country have faced injustice for far too long. For things to change, we must change. We must commit ourselves to this change with conviction and love." A lot of people didn't like how she used the term people of color instead of just saying Black people, as the movement was surrounding the racism that Black people have endured and continue to endure. After deleting the post, Ellen corrected herself by issuing another tweet showing her support for the Black Lives Matter protests and also pledging to donate to a handful of charities and organizations. At number 5, privilege. While people were still discussing how Ellen was really behind the scenes, the theme of privilege came up and a lot of people called her out for it. After her tone-deaf joke about comparing life in quarantine to life in incarceration, people kept looking for more examples of how she lives such a privileged life. And one person came forward with an example that shocked a lot of people. Back in May last year, a former Ellen Show producer spoke out about how Ellen once called Steve Jobs personally to complain about the font size on the iPhone. This came after Ellen lost her glasses and was having trouble reading the text on her phone. The former producer recalled the incident saying, quote, "She stopped everything and made a call. Next thing we know, we literally hear Steve Jobs pick up and say, 'Hi, Ellen.'" Ellen told him the iPhone should have bigger font. He continues saying, quote, "That's her. It's not that she's some demon. She just lives in an incredibly privileged bubble and is out of touch with the real world." At number 4, apology fail. Following all the backlash that she'd been receiving, when The Ellen Show made its return after a quarantine hiatus, Ellen had to make amends for her actions and had to address some of the allegations against her, like misconduct and workplace toxicity. During her opening monologue, the comedian issued an apology for the things that she'd been accused of, but it didn't really go over well with her audience. During her apology, Ellen admitted that she was, quote, "a work in progress," and that she wasn't aware of the negativity in her workplace. Ellen also joked that she isn't a good enough actress to, quote, "come out here every day for 17 years and fool you." People didn't like how she mostly deflected and made jokes about the situation she was caught in, rather than owning up to her actions, which really just made her look worse in the public's eye and added to her growing criticism. At number 3, Nikki Tutorials interview. One of the instances that was sort of the fuel for this Ellen is over party fire was YouTuber Nikki Tutorials' testimony about how she was treated after she was invited on the show in January last year. During an interview in March of last year, Nikki spoke out about the atmosphere at the Ellen show, saying, quote, "The friendly, welcoming atmosphere you see when watching Ellen isn't the reality in the studio." Nikki said that she was expecting a warm welcome when arriving at the studio, but that she was instead, quote, "greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked." Nikki also told sources that she didn't receive the same VIP treatment as everyone else, saying that she couldn't even use the bathroom closest to her because it was reserved for the Jonas Brothers, who were also on the show that day. She also commented on Ellen's personality, saying that she was very cold and distant when the cameras were off, making for a very different vibe on the show. This was a very different response than people were expecting, so this became big news, which later escalated into a much bigger scandal. At number 2, Dakota Johnson interview. The other incident many people think of as the beginning of the Ellen is Over party comes from actress Dakota Johnson's 2019 interview with the comedian. During the interview, Ellen berated Dakota about the fact that she wasn't invited to Dakota's birthday party, and many people saw this whole debate as incredibly unnecessary and uncalled for. Dakota stood her ground during the interview, shutting Ellen down and not being made to look like the bad guy like Ellen intended, but this also showed how Ellen can sometimes go too far. Fans didn't like the way that the actress was treated during her time on the show, and after Ellen was cancelled, some saw this as justice for Dakota because Ellen was no longer able to get away with behaving like this. And finally, at number 1, Twitter. At the height of Ellen's cancellation, podcaster Kevin T. Porter sent out a tweet asking for people to share their horror stories about the comedian, and he said that he would make a $2 donation to a food bank for every insane story he received. Because of this tweet, a lot of people came forward talking about their bad experiences with Ellen, and this really added most of the heat to Ellen's growing fire. It wasn't just former employees and celebrities who came forward either. Fans and other people who have encountered Ellen off camera were also coming forward to recount some of their horrible experiences with her. Because of the amount of people who tweeted in response to this prompt, it caused this scandal to grow bigger and bigger, painting Ellen to look more and more like a villain, as news sources started picking up on the biggest and most outrageous stories to report on. Kevin's tweet received 2,800 replies, along with over 17,000 retweets and over 70,000 likes. This tweet blew up and made the scandal erupt to become even bigger than anyone thought it would, and caused immeasurable damage to Ellen's career. If it wasn't for this massive attention this tweet got, Ellen's career might not have been as damaged as it is now.